And welcome to Regent Leadership Live. I'm Kylie Hazeldine, and you join us on what is the final episode of our journey through leadership challenges and how we tackle them today. I'm joined by my guest today, Tim Walker, who is the Managing Director of Aura Technologies.
Hi, Kylie.
Hi. And Darren Hilton, Executive Coach and owner of Tapping the Source.
Hi, Kylie.
So today we're going to talk about mindsets, and obviously you at home, the audience, can join in with our conversation using the hashtag ExecEdTV, and I'll try and put your questions to our guests as the conversation develops. So chaps, perhaps you could start with telling us a bit about your background, your forays with leadership and experience in this area. Tim?
Okay, yeah, sure. Most of my background has been in the information technology sector. I set a business up in 2008 called Iconics, which grew to be a pretty successful London-based service provider to SMEs, so serving the business community. That business was sold in 2012. So had some quite interesting experiences there of creating a culture and a business from nothing. In startup mode, and then seeing that ultimately exited and integrated into another business. And then I went to the South Coast and was managing director of a business down there called TaylorMade, which it was a business that was largely a traditional IT company that was looking to reinvent itself as a managed service provider. I came out of that business at the end of last year, and I'm just in the process of setting up a new company called Aura Technology. We're going to market to serve what we believe is a gap in the mid-market, and that business is really looking to rethink the relationship between business and IT. So do something really quite different and innovative, which we see as a real gap in the mid-market. So most of my career has been in business-to-business organisations, and I've worked with a variety of characters of leader. I think my leadership style has evolved into one that is fundamentally based on a positive mindset. So I was really interested in this topic and really excited to get going and discussing it. I've worked with Darren since about 2013. Darren was a supplier to my last company, and we've known each other for some time and have a similar mindset, I think, but
that's right.
Remains to be seen what happens in the discussion.
Yeah. Okay, Dan, do you want to tell us a bit about
Yeah,
what you do?
So I'm an executive coach, full-time executive coach, and work in leadership development. But my sort of leadership journey started when I was 16 when I joined the army. I was a Royal Engineer Commando, and leadership, the principles of leadership were drilled into you at a very young age. So in many ways, that was sort of the foundation of my leadership journey. And then entered the technology market for about 20 years, which is where I met Tim. And during that sort of time, worked in sales leadership, set a business up with some colleagues, we grew it, navigated 2008, and then eventually sold it to a bigger group in 2010. And then took on a project in that group where they bought a business that was failing and we had to turn it around. And so again, that was a different sort of leadership that we needed to implement, but working with the people in the team there to turn the culture around in order to turn the business around. And that's when I met Tim, because Tim was one of our biggest customers. And what was clear in that relationship was that we did have a similar mindset. And as a result, we were able to grow the businesses. I was able to grow mine, Tim was able to grow his. And it led to a successful partnership. I left that business last year to focus on the executive coaching part of my background, which I really enjoy. And I get to work with lots of interesting organisations, mainly financial services in the city, utility, healthcare are the main ones, and small, medium-sized businesses. So working with people like Tim, who own their businesses, looking for rapid growth, and are looking to get the best sort of people on board and develop them, in order to get the best out of their businesses.
So this issue of mindsets and I guess positive thinking is something that's kind of run as quite a theme through our conversations through this series. But I've noticed it's a term that's used quite a lot in leadership and professional development. So perhaps we can explore what it means to you. So when we talk about mindsets, what does that mean to you, Tim?
I think it means that for most, I think for everyone, what you think about most of the time ends up being what manifests in your life. And I became first familiar with that concept when I picked up a book by Anthony Robbins when I was about 16 or 17. I can't remember what drew me to this particular book, but it was one of his first books, Awaken the Giant Within. And that sort of taught me something about, you know, what you do, and really taught me about goal setting and really setting a target, having a positive outcome in mind, and then working towards achieving that. And by doing that, you tend to focus with positive momentum on what you're trying to achieve. And then that was sort of reinforced by reading Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And you know, one of the 7 habits is beginning with the end in mind, and actually, you know, knowing what your outcome is, and then working back from that, and maintaining focus on it as much as you can. And in my experiences, you know, my experience is not all glowing and positive and being enormously successful. They've been their share of failures along the way. They've been the share of things that I thought I was going to achieve that I didn't. And most of the time I haven't. It's because I've maybe not believed it 100%. I haven't focused with enough energy on the positive outcome. There've been more positives than negatives, but I can certainly attach a lot of meaning to the negative mindset, which has taught me to really focus on having a positive mindset as much as possible.
And this must be a kind of concept that you work with your clients on a regular basis.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the chimp paradox. So many people have heard of the chimp paradox. Steve Peters talks about mindset as your view of yourself, your view of others, and your view of the world. You know, and I think that's a really great way to describe it. But what resonated with me there with Tim was when you're going through the various projects that you have during your sort of commercial life, is whether you really believe in it or not. You know, you can sort of superficially believe, and you can kind of do all the right things, but deep down, you know if you really believe. And I think part of that sometimes comes from experience, a lack of confidence. Sometimes, you know, because you've got that voice in the back of your head, the gremlin that everybody's got to varying degrees, and that really resonates with me, because when you do have the confidence and you do fundamentally believe, it makes life so much easier, doesn't it? You don't feel like you're constantly battling against something else. You're as whole as you can be, and I think that's where you genuinely get performance.
It is, and I think a lot of that is about having total commitment to what that is, and I think that when I've based on sort of having read the 7 Habits and Awaken the Giant Within, I used a number of the techniques in my finals at university, and at the time I combined that with the use of meditation and mindfulness to kind of really create a space in your mind that you end up filling with a focus on what that outcome you want to be is. You know, your mind is able to be so sharp and clear. And I used it again when I went into the sale process for the business. You know, we'd had a couple of false starts, and I probably didn't quite believe that those sales were going to happen. But there was one particular thing about this last sale in 2012 that I thought, do you know what, this is going to be the one. We're going to focus 100% on absolutely going for it and doing everything we possibly can to achieve that result. And it was total 100% commitment and steadfast focus of me and, you know, all the other directors within our group of companies that enabled us to achieve that result. So you've almost got to go in lock, stock and barrel and not even consider, you know, that there'll be any outcome other than you have to commit to that success, don't you?
Yes, yeah, and I can relate to that in terms of when we sold our business. You know, that took 5 months, but you know, it was knowing that the outcome was going to be positive. You know, I knew that it was going to be positive because I knew that people we were selling to were the right people, and it just felt right. You know, but if there'd been a sense during that process, or either side had wobbled, it would have derailed the whole thing. There were certain times during that you know, the belief that it was the right thing to do sort of carried the day, if you like, carried us through. But I think I came to, funnily enough, meditation later than you did. You know, because I'd always been looking at it from a sort of cognitive, outside-in perspective. You know, and it was the realization that actually to really get performance and satisfaction and happiness, actually, it's within. You know, you spend your time looking at. I mean, don't get me wrong, I read a lot like Tim does, but you can read a lot, but be reading to look for the answers that you think are out there when actually it's inside. You know, and when you realise that, it gives you a huge amount of power. You know, and being able to tap into that whenever you need to, I think when you get to that point of realisation, then you can really start to harness your abilities, because you know there's nothing can stop you, because you hold the power.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the when you go through a sale process, the kind of the challenges, the bumps in the road that you get along the way. It just struck me that when we were trying to buy a business in 2010, when I was running Iconics, I remember thinking to myself, from the moment we started discussing that we were going to have the potential to buy this business in about October 2009, I remember thinking then, this deal will happen.
Yes.
And there was a moment in early 2010 when there was a complete walk away moment.
Yes.
And it was like, we said, they're the terms. If we don't go for that, we will walk away. And there was a real potential that the other side could have done. You know, we weren't calling their bluff. We were saying, you know, we can only go with these terms. And even then, I remember thinking, no, this deal's definitely going to happen.
Yes.
They're going to go with this, and we're going to get the deal done, and we did.
Yeah.
And it ended up being, you know, really successful. But you know, that again, it's that commitment sees you through adversity. That is a positive and resilient mindset that I think you have to have in trying to achieve anything in life. Could be business, could be a sporting goal, could be personal achievement. It doesn't matter what it is. You know, a growth, positive mindset is really key.
I mean, it's a technique they use, as you say, in sports coaching all the time. That visualization and belief. You know, that you see yourself holding that gold medal, or you see yourself, you know, having broken that record, and the visualization element of it is really important. And I think something that you've just said there really kind of resonates with me about the whole power of belief and the subconscious mind, because our conscious mind always wants to say to us, well, okay, you believe this, but how? And we have to give over sometimes, that we don't need to know how we're going to get there. We have to believe we're going to get there. And then the law of attraction says that what we're putting out there will come to us. You talked about people that you were, you know, a couple of people you were selling to and it didn't work. You know, for me, that's about, you know, the right time and the right people, and being on the right vibrations with people that, you know, selling to the right people for the deal that was ultimately right for you, and those walkaway moments, and not being scared. I think there's you have to kind of give over to the belief of it sometimes.
Yes.
And that's the kind of thing that I think, you know, in our businesses, that's the kind of thing that we look for. You know, there's a kind of old management adage, really, which is that you recruit for attitude and you train for skill.
Yeah.
And, you know, attitude is absolutely key. And we've both used the same agency at times, haven't we, to recruit grads in?
Yes.
So people who've got really no work experience that are coming into quite high-pressured sales roles, they've got an attitude of resilience. You know, they've got a positive attitude that whatever they put their mind to, it is going to happen. And you see that in the way that they deal with things, because they have to make lots of cold calls, or they have to deal with difficult customers, or, you know, they've got to go and win something and create demand from nothing. And that's, you know, I closely tied in with attitude, and people with really good attitudes. It's like a multiplier effect in a business. You know, you can achieve 10 times more with people with great attitudes, because the whole thing snowballs.
Yeah, no, I think the other thing is they generate stories. So we've hired from the same place, and I always remember this one grad that I hired. He still works for the group that I was part of, And he didn't know the technologies that we were providing to customers. But over Christmas, he did 30 hours of YouTube videos to get him up to speed, and he knew more than many of the people in the sales team when he came back. You know, and that I've retold that story many times, which is, look, you know, this guy did it off his own back. You know, he went through the hard yards of learning and then applied it when he came back to the business. So, you know, he was an interesting character, but his mindset was absolutely in the right place. And he's going to, I can already see he's going great places. You know, he's a sort of rising star. He just needs the right sort of management, really, and leadership to enable him to get there.
There's something about our culture and that kind of says that the thing to do is to do well at school and go to university and get an MBA and acquire all of this knowledge. And I think when you look at and you reflect on the people that's successful, there are a range of people, some that, you know, the whole particular business people up or particular successful people as never having really had a core education. But there are people that have also had a kind of higher level of education. But for me, it's about that knowing and doing gap. Like, you can acquire lots of knowledge, but it's about understanding how to kind of organise that knowledge and when to use it. I was listening to a chapter in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, only yesterday morning actually, and they were talking about just that whole concept of lots of people go out and acquire education and believe that that's then what it takes to be successful, but only a very small percentage really acquire that power to organise that knowledge and utilise that knowledge in the right way and bring, you know, you don't always have to know the answers as a leader, but it's about bringing that team around you. And something you said there, Tim, kind of reminded me of that, where you were talking about kind of bringing the right people around you and bringing teams around you. And we kind of sometimes talk about it with our groups about kind of masterminding and bringing all the different expertise together and really kind of solving a problem. And it's like bringing together the cells of a battery when you can do that and get people together. And
it is.
And, you know, you have any experiences of how you bring teams together to really solve a problem?
I think you've got to understand the team dynamic and look at the roles that you need and understand, I guess, from your own skill set what as a leader what you're actually bringing to that team. It may be that you're not actually bringing a lot of the doing. You're maybe bringing a lot of the, you know, orchestrating that team and managing and motivating that team rather than necessarily doing a lot of the doing yourself. I think you know, to your point, really, it's about experience. You know, lots of people know the theory, and the only way you get experience is by going out there and doing things that are moving you towards your goal, and actually and probably accepting the fact that it won't all go according to plan. You will make mistakes. You can't repeat the same mistakes over and over again, but you know, the value in probably my career and above anything else is the things that have gone really badly wrong, where you just go, oh, you know, that can never happen again, and you end up again. It's like a multiplier effect. The motivation not to make that mistake again becomes a driver that moves you in a positive direction. And I think in the world of business, there are so many great groups and great organisations that enable you to come together with other entrepreneurs, other business leaders, where you can actually discuss in you know, quite good, you know, good forums, often under Chatham House rule, where you can really get some of the issues out that you're facing and get input from other people and being really receptive to taking feedback. Is probably one of the best lessons, I think, in having a great mindset and building a great business. Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, establishing a quality set of values that actually mean something to you and the organisation, and then living those values. I mean, it's easy to say, and there's lots of values plastered up on lots of office walls that probably aren't lived by, you know, for one reason or another. But if you get those things right at the start, it makes life so much easier, because everybody's got a framework to work by, you know, and when things don't go according to plan, or somebody comes into the organisation because every time you get a new person or somebody leaves in an organisation, it changes a dynamic. And getting a high performing team to work is actually, that's as much an art as it is sort of a technical process, because it depends on the people you've got in there. But getting performance out of a group of people is, it's hard work. It takes commitment. You've got to genuinely want people. I think as leaders, you've got to genuinely want people to perform and be at their best. Because if you don't, they'll see straight through you.
Yeah.
So, and I think the other side to it is what I always find interesting is, you only really see the quality of a person or a team when they're tested. And when you're in the leadership position, you're often tested. And they can see exactly how you respond. And so if you're not being authentic, that's when it will tell.
Exactly.
So you have to. I think as a leader, you have to get your mindset right. Clear the clutter, so that you are able to lead in the best way. Otherwise, you cause probably more baggage than you get rid of, with the people that are following you.
Yeah, that's right. One of the most successful CEOs I've ever had the privilege to work with, he's grown multiple software businesses to, in some cases, hundreds of millions of turnover and value. And he said to me that very early on in his career, he learnt to regard his board as really the best learning environment he could possibly have. And he said to me that he developed very quickly a mindset of it's really easy to be defensive when you go into board and you're being challenged by your directors or your major shareholders. Yeah. And it's really easy to go, they're criticising my business. And he said once he released that attitude and just became every time he got feedback, he would answer that with, I think that's a really great idea.
Yes.
And I'm going to go and look into how I can apply that. And he stopped being defensive, and he used his board as the opportunity to really develop and take his business on month after month after month.
Yes.
And that's a great attitude.
I think you're right. There was a quote I saw the other day which was about coaching, the practice of coaching. And it was, don't get stuck, get interested. So if you've got an interested mindset, everything's coming to you.
Yeah.
You don't have your walls up. You can make the most of the information. People can tell that you're actively listening, and then you're going to make progress.
And that comes back to the law of attraction, and actually having a positive energy about things and not being defensive means exactly that. You were saying just before this moment about you start to notice things that are there because your mindset is what are all the things that can possibly help me move towards something I'm trying to achieve.
Yes.
And that's a really great positive attitude and mindset to have.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with that is that often it's us that gets in the way, isn't it? So think about leadership, and when you're a young manager or you're in a position of leadership at a young age, you're often more worried about what leadership should be rather than how do I do a great job of my role.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about The Inner Game, the book The Inner Game, I've come across it.
In Galway.
Yes.
That's great.
Where it's all about self one and self two. Self two is your subconscious, it's your being, if you like. Self one is what gets in your way now, and it's your sergeant major in there telling you what you're not doing right, and so you get so confused with that you don't actually perform. And it's a difficult one, because development takes time. You have to have experiences, but I think the process of self-reflection, of meditation and mindfulness, what that does, if you do it regularly on a daily basis, it speeds the whole process up. It doesn't take long for you to really start to get underneath who you are when you practice those sorts of things on a regular basis.
I think actually you've started to delve into one of the questions that we've had on our Twitter feed, which is those. So we're all talking quite freely about the practice of mindfulness and those kind of things. What are some of the tools and techniques that you use regularly that you could recommend to our viewers? One or two things that they could take up and start doing that might get them in the right mindsets.
Well, we've both been reading a book called The Miracle Morning, and I'd recommend that to anyone that wants to kind of develop their mindset and help just the way they do things day to day to kind of create that positive vibration and movement and momentum towards their objective. And one of the things that within the acronym of the Miracle Morning, there's one of the S's within that acronym is silence, and that's about having, you know, could be 5 minutes, could be 20 minutes, you know, and having some period of just not thinking about anything. And you know, there are various techniques you can use. You can focus on an object. You can use a mantra that you repeat. You could just focus on the breath, and that period of silence is incredibly helpful, particularly if it's done in the morning, to set your day up and to clear your mind. And you end up just getting, over 3 or 4 weeks of doing that every day, you start to notice a real sharpness and focus that you probably didn't have before.
And confidence. You know, we a chap called Lee Evans, who's a hypnotherapist, and he's a very good one. And he talks about the power of breathing. You know, because it's also very physical. You know, if you're able to breathe in the right way, it affects your nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system, which calms you down. You know, so when you start to understand actually the physicality of it, it starts to make sense. But you know, I agree with Tim. The practice, i.e., doing it regularly and getting better at it, of meditation is a massively powerful thing. You know, and you don't need to try to do it. You just need to spend some time do it. You know, I spoke to somebody the other day about it, and she said, "I just can't get my head around it. I just can't get there." And I said, "You're just trying too hard."
Yeah.
You know, and you just got to let it. It's stopping the chatter in your mind. It's the process of stopping the mind and just saying, "Quiet down and just let me have some silence." And then you'd be amazed what comes from that. You know, ideas. I generally get one great idea every morning as a result of doing this. You know?
And I think the other aspects of something like the Miracle Morning around visualization, around affirmations, actually having some time just to sit down and write some thoughts down, or some great things that you've read, that's another part of the process, means that if you spend an hour in the morning and you can build that into your schedule, and that's not actually that difficult to do, the days you do it run significantly better than the days you don't. Now, on the odd day I haven't done it, I know I'm in a different place to the days I have.
You really notice it, don't you?
Yeah.
I it's something that I practice regularly in the morning and in the evening. And if I haven't had a chance to do it in the morning, my day takes a completely different path in terms of that. And I practice affirmations in the morning and breathing and kind of silent time. And those, it took a long time to get into the habit of that. And I think they say, you know, is it like 90 days to get something into your subconscious? So, you know, my advice would be to stick with it for, you know, at least 90 days.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll definitely feel the transformation. And I was a real skeptic about these kind of things. And I think, you know, now, as you say, the days you don't do it, you really, really do notice it. But yeah.
But Hal Elrod in The Miracle Morning says 30 days. You know, he says there's 10 days of it feeling like it's impossible. There's 10 days of it feeling uncomfortable, and then you start to get the benefit over the last 10 days, you know, and then you really, you know, you've sort of embedded that habit, if you like, into your mind.
Yeah. Well, it's been a wonderful discussion, and I think we could probably talk about these things, and it's such a lovely topic, and it gives you a very positive feeling. I think talking about that and reminds you kind of why we do these things. So thank you very much. But unfortunately, we have run out of time.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
I know these conversations flow very, very quickly. And unfortunately, that's also the last in our series so far. But please do join us on our social media spaces and continue the conversation using the hashtag ExecEdTV. And hopefully we'll see you again soon for Series 2 of Regent Leadership Live. Thank you.